At what I thought was a family celebration, my son and daughter-in-law tried to drug me and declare me incompetent to steal my life's work. They thought I was oblivious. I just listened, planned, and waited. Now, they're learning the true meaning of consequences. Like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. My story begins now. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to Eleanor Vance, a familiar comfort after 16 hours in the operating room. At 64, her hands were as steady as ever, her mind as sharp. But the emergency quadruple bypass had drained her reserves. She longed for the familiar embrace of her home, the quiet hum of her son and daughter-in-law's presence. A quick call from the hospital had informed her family she was heading back, an hour earlier than expected. She expected David or Serena to be waiting at the curb. Instead, the chilly evening air bit at her, and the hospital's automated doors hissed shut behind her, leaving her alone on the deserted pavement. No car, no familiar faces. A wave of exhaustion, tinged with a faint sting of disappointment, washed over her. It was unlike David to forget, even if Serena sometimes, well, Serena had her own way of doing things. Eleanor hailed a passing taxi, giving the driver her address, the familiar route feeling longer than usual. When the cab pulled up to her house, an unsettling darkness greeted her. The porch light, usually left on for her late returns, was off, an unusual oversight. As she fumbled with her purse, searching for her house keys, a small figure darted from the shadows of the empty lot next door. It was a girl, no older than 7 or 8, her clothes smudged with dirt, hair a tangled mess. Her eyes, keen and earnest, fixed on Eleanor. "Please, don't go in there, not yet," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Eleanor paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob. "Who are you, dear? What's wrong?" The girl's gaze darted fearfully toward the darkened house. "The pretty lady with the yellow hair," she murmured. "She's doing bad things to your stuff." Lily, she introduced herself, her tiny hands twisting the hem of her worn dress. She glanced over her shoulder again, as if expecting to be caught. "She put your sparkly things in boxes." And she was laughing on the phone, saying you wouldn't need them anymore. Lily's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "My grandma Helen Miller used to live next door. She told me about the pretty lady. She said she was always very neat." Eleanor felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Sparkly things? Her jewelry? Her grandmother's heirlooms? The thought was absurd, yet the child's sincerity was undeniable. Before Eleanor could press for more details, Lily stiffened, her small body tensing. "Someone's coming," she hissed, her eyes wide with alarm. In a flash, she melted back into the deeper shadows of the overgrown, empty lot, vanishing as silently as she had appeared. Eleanor stared at the spot where the girl had been, then back at her front door. In the faint glow from a distant street lamp, she noticed it. Fresh, jagged scratches circling the keyhole, as if someone had recently tried to force the lock, or perhaps bypass it with an unfamiliar key. Just as the chilling realization began to set in, the front door swung open. Serena stood there, perfectly coiffed, her blonde hair gleaming under the sudden flood of light from inside. A practiced smile stretched across her face, though her eyes held a glint Eleanor couldn't quite decipher. "Eleanor, is that you? We were so worried when you didn't call. David just went out looking for you." Her voice, usually a pleasant alto, seemed a touch too bright, too effusive. "I called," Eleanor said, stepping inside, her gaze sweeping the familiar foyer. Everything seemed normal, yet subtly off. The framed family photos on the console table, usually arranged in a precise order, appeared slightly askew, one even turned a fraction of an inch to the left. The air carried a faint, sweet smell, not unpleasant, but certainly not the usual scent of her home. And the porch light was off. Serena waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, darling, I must have forgotten. So silly of me. We were just so engrossed in David's new work project." She moved to take Eleanor's bag, her movements a little too solicitous. Eleanor's eyes landed on the empty space on the small antique table beside the staircase, where her mother's prized crystal vase, an intricate piece from Bohemia, always sat. It was gone. "Serena, where's Mother's vase?" Serena's smile wavered for a fraction of a second, then snapped back into place, a touch of patronizing concern creeping into her voice. "Oh, Eleanor, you've had such a long day. You're exhausted. Maybe you're thinking of a different spot. I'm sure it's around somewhere. She steered Eleanor towards the stairs. Why don't you go up and rest? I'll make you some chamomile tea. Eleanor ascended the stairs slowly, her senses on high alert. The house felt different. Her bedroom, her sanctuary, usually a haven of order, now held a faint disturbance. The antique jewelry box on her dresser was slightly askew. Her wedding photo, a cherished memory of her late husband, usually stood proudly upright, but now it was face down. On her nightstand, beside her usual glass of water, sat a small, amber-colored bottle of sleep aids. Eleanor picked it up. The label listed a doctor she'd never heard of, a general practitioner, not her own long-standing family physician. A cold dread seeped into her bones. She moved to the window, pulling back the curtain. Through the glass, she saw her. Lily, a small, hunched figure, was huddled under the old oak tree in the empty lot, her eyes fixed intently on Eleanor's house. The child was real. Her warning was real. A hushed conversation drifted up from downstairs. Serena's voice, low but clear. Eleanor pressed her ear closer to the vent near her door, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Went perfectly," Serena whispered, her voice laced with triumph. She's already doubting herself. The little changes, the missing items, it's all working. A few more weeks of the medication in her morning coffee, and we can move forward with the plan. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Medication, morning coffee, the sleep aids. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrifying precision. Serena's voice continued, a chilling drone that twisted Eleanor's stomach into knots. The lawyer said once she's declared incompetent, David will have full power of attorney. He'll sign everything over. The house alone is worth $800,000, not to mention her investment portfolio and that incredible art collection. The words echoed in Eleanor's mind, a horrifying mantra. Declared incompetent, full power of attorney. House alone is worth $800,000. Sleep was a distant dream. She lay rigid in her bed, the unfamiliar bottle of sleep aids on her nightstand mocking her. Her son, her David, complicit in this monstrous scheme. The thought was a dagger twisting in her heart. She replayed Serena's whispered confession, dissecting every word, every nuance. The small, scared girl, Lily, suddenly made perfect sense. The scratches on the door, the missing vase, the turned photo, all pieces of a meticulously crafted, cruel puzzle. Eleanor had dedicated her life to healing, to saving others. Now she was the one under siege, her very sanity being targeted by the people she loved most. The next morning, the cheerful sounds from downstairs felt like a carefully orchestrated performance. Serena's lilting humming floated up the stairs, followed by the rich, inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Eleanor descended slowly, her senses heightened, every nerve ending on alert. Serena, radiating an almost artificial warmth, greeted her with a bright smile. "Good morning, darling. Sleep well? I've made your favorite blend." She gestured toward the steaming mug already placed at Eleanor's usual spot at the kitchen table. Eleanor approached the table, her gaze lingering on the coffee. The subtle sweetness she'd noticed yesterday, now she understood its insidious purpose. "Thank you, Serena," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "But I think I'll just have water and toast this morning. My stomach feels a bit unsettled after that long surgery yesterday." Serena's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before snapping back into place, a touch tighter this time. "Oh dear, are you sure? Coffee always helps settle things." She pushed the mug a little closer. "I'm quite fair by your kitchen," Eleanor replied, pulling out her chair. David, already engrossed in his phone, looked up, a mild concern in his eyes. "Mom, you all right?" he asked. Serena chimed in, her voice dripping with exaggerated worry. "She's just a little off, David. You know, like last night, asking about some vase that wasn't there. I told her she was just tired." She shot Eleanor's meaningful glance, a subtle reminder of the narrative they were weaving. David frowned. "Mom, you really were quite insistent about that vase. Maybe you should take it easy, and perhaps you should consider seeing Dr. Hayes, just to be safe." Serena said he's excellent. Eleanor felt a surge of cold fury. Dr. Hayes, the unfamiliar name on the sleep aid bottle. They were moving quickly. "I know exactly where that vase was, David." Eleanor stated, her voice firm, unwavering. It was right there on the antique table by the stairs, and I know it's missing. She met David's gaze, trying to penetrate the wall Serena had built around him. Her mind raced, connecting the dots that had seemed inconsequential until now. Serena's helpful rearrangement of her prescription bottles, claiming she was just tidying. The countless times Eleanor had sworn she'd placed her car keys in one spot, only for Serena to find them in another, accompanied by a sympathetic sigh about Eleanor's senior moments. The junk mail Serena had diligently intercepted and thrown away, which Eleanor now realized likely contained important financial statements or legal documents. It wasn't simple forgetfulness. It was a deliberate, insidious campaign of psychological manipulation. Later, on her drive to the hospital, the familiar route offered no solace. Instead of focusing on her patients, Eleanor's thoughts were consumed by Serena's meticulous web of deceit. She thought of Mrs. Lee, her elderly neighbor and bridge partner, who had suddenly stopped her weekly visits, claiming a vague illness. Her book club, which had abruptly changed its meeting location to a cafe across town, with Eleanor somehow missing the memo. And then there was Maria, her beloved housekeeper of 20 years, who had suddenly, inexplicably, quit 2 months ago. Maria, a woman whose loyalty and discretion Eleanor trusted implicitly. A sudden, fierce resolve hardened Eleanor's jaw. She wouldn't go to the hospital. Not today. She turned the wheel, veering off the usual path. She knew Maria's address. It was a long shot, but she needed to talk to her. She needed a tangible piece of truth, something outside the suffocating confines of her own home. Eleanor found Maria tending her small, vibrant flower garden, her back to the street. The sight brought a lump to Eleanor's throat. She pulled over, the car crunching on the gravel shoulder. Maria straightened, shading her eyes, and her face broke into a wide, genuine smile of surprise. "Eleanor! Oh, it's so good to see you. What a pleasant surprise." Eleanor got out of the car, feeling a rush of relief at Maria's uncomplicated warmth. "Maria, it's wonderful to see you too. I've missed you." Maria's smile dimmed slightly. "I missed you too, Eleanor. I was so sad to leave. But Serena said you didn't need my services anymore. Said you were having trouble with strangers in the house and needed more privacy." Maria's brow furrowed. "I thought it was strange, after all these years, but she was very firm." Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. "She told you that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The sheer audacity, the depth of the betrayal hit her with the force of a physical blow. Serena hadn't just isolated her from her friends and David. She had cut off her most trusted confidants, fabricating lies to ensure Eleanor was utterly alone. The realization settled in Eleanor's chest, cold and heavy. The web of deceit wasn't just extensive, it was suffocating. Returning home, Eleanor found David and Serena in the living room, their voices hushed, their heads bent in a conspiratorial whisper. As Eleanor stepped through the door, they quickly separated, their faces snapping into expressions of forced neutrality. David approached her, his voice soft, almost paternal, but with an underlying firmness that sent shivers down Eleanor's spine. "Mom, we need to talk. We're worried about you." Serena stepped closer, her hand resting on David's arm, her eyes wide with what she intended to be concern. "Yes, Eleanor. First the confusion about the vase, and now, well, Maria called us. She said you asked her to come back, even though you told her yourself you didn't want housekeeping anymore. You remember telling her that, don't you?" For a split second, Eleanor felt a wave of dizzying disorientation. Had she? Had she told Maria that? The insidious doubts, carefully planted by Serena, threatened to take root. But then, as if the switch had flipped, she remembered. The pills. Serena's chilling confession downstairs. The clear, undeniable truth of Maria's words. No. Serena had lied to Maria. Serena was lying now. The disorientation vanished, replaced by an icy, unwavering resolve. They were trying to break her. But Eleanor Vance was not broken. She was just beginning to fight back. Eleanor felt a cold, hard resolve settle in her heart. They were playing a dangerous game, but she would not be their pawn. "You're right," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "I am tired. I think I will go rest for a bit." She turned, heading for the stairs, the faint echo of Serena's triumphant glance at David following her. As she reached the landing, David's voice, laced with uncertainty, drifted up. Do you really think we should call Dr. Hayes? Serena's reply was firm, devoid of the earlier feigned concern. I think we have to, David, for her own safety and ours. The words were a venomous sting. Once in the privacy of her bedroom, Eleanor locked the door. Her hands, usually so steady in the operating theater, trembled slightly as she approached her jewelry box, the one that had been askew, the one Lily had spoken of. She opened it, her breath catching in her throat. The familiar velvet lining held not her grandmother's lustrous pearl necklace, a family heirloom passed down for generations, nor the exquisite diamond earrings her late husband had given her on their anniversary. Instead, nestled amongst a few of her less valuable pieces, was a collection of cheap glittering costume jewelry she didn't recognize, the kind one might buy at a discount store. Her precious heirlooms gone, replaced. The audacity was sickening. She moved to her desk, a sense of urgency propelling her. She had a small, fireproof safe where she kept her most important documents. Her fingers fumbled with the combination, her mind racing. Inside, her will was exactly where she'd left it, but stapled to it, a cruel mockery of her own autonomy, was a power of attorney form. The document granted David full control over her finances and medical decisions in the event of her mental incapacitation. Her signature, or a remarkably good forgery of it, adorned the bottom line. Eleanor stared at it, a horrifying chasm opening in her memory. She had no recollection, none at all, of ever signing such a document. They weren't just stealing her possessions. They were stealing her life, her future, her very identity. She looked up, her gaze drawn to the window. Under the majestic oak tree in the empty lot, Lily was there, a small, watchful sentinel. Eleanor knew then what she had to do. She had to talk to Lily. The child was her only connection to an outside truth, her silent witness. The next morning, Eleanor made a deliberate show of pouring herself a large glass of orange juice at breakfast. Still feeling a bit queasy, she announced, her voice light as she avoided the coffee pot. Orange juice should help. It was a subtle act of defiance, a silent declaration that she was not falling for their trick. Serena's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly, but her smile remained fixed. Well, that's a shame, darling. All the more reason to see Dr. Hayes then. For your stomach, too. It could all be related to the other issues. Her eyes, cold and calculating, rested on Eleanor. Eleanor met her gaze, a tiny spark of rebellion igniting within her. Perhaps, she said, pushing back her chair. But first I need to run some errands. I need to get to the grocery store. I'm completely out of a few things. She looked pointedly at Serena. Alone. Serena's offer to accompany her hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. Eleanor cut her off. No, really. I need some time to myself, and I need to pick up a few specific things that only I know where to find. Her tone left no room for argument. With a barely concealed sigh of frustration, Serena finally conceded. Eleanor grabbed her purse and keys, making sure to avoid David's eyes, which still held a disturbing blend of concern and placid acceptance of Serena's narrative. Eleanor drove her car around the corner, parking it discreetly where it couldn't be seen from her house. She waited, watching her own home through the rearview mirror. Minutes stretched into an agonizing quarter of an hour. Finally, she saw Serena's sleek, expensive car back out of the driveway, followed by David's SUV. They were gone. Eleanor waited a few more minutes just to be sure, then got out of her car. She walked towards the empty lot, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. As she approached the oak tree, Lily emerged, a small backpack clutched in her hand. The child looked startled to see Eleanor. Hello, Lily, Eleanor said softly, kneeling down to be at eye level. I'm the lady from last night, Eleanor. Lily nodded, her eyes wide. The pretty lady with the yellow hair isn't home, she whispered, confirming Eleanor's suspicions. She left in her fancy car, with the other lady that has the short red hair. Eleanor absorbed this new piece of information. Another player? Lily, Eleanor began, choosing her words carefully. You said the pretty lady was doing bad things to my stuff. Can you tell me more about that? Lily sat down on an overturned wooden crate near the tree, her backpack resting beside her. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. She brings men to your house sometimes, Lily began, her voice low, as if sharing a great secret. When you're not there, men with trucks, they take your stuff away. Eleanor's blood ran cold, solidifying the sickening feeling she'd had about the missing crystal vase and her jewelry. What kind of stuff, Lily? She pressed, her voice barely a whisper. Pretty things, Lily replied, her gaze distant, as if recalling a memory. Silver things that sparkle, and boxes of other stuff. Lots of boxes. And the pretty lady, she gives them money. Lily looked up at Eleanor, her eyes, though young, held a wisdom that seemed far too old for her face. It's been happening since before the cold weather started. Eleanor's mind raced, calculating. That would be months. Months of systematic theft right under her nose, facilitated by Serena. Lily's next words hit Eleanor with a crushing blow. She hurt my grandma, too. The words hung in the air, chilling Eleanor to her core. She hurt my grandma, too. Eleanor's gaze intensified, a new cold determination settling over her features. Your grandma, Helen Miller, Eleanor confirmed, recalling the name Lily had mentioned earlier. She lived in the blue house next door, didn't she? Lily nodded, her small face clouded with a profound sadness that seemed utterly out of place on a child. Yes, she used to give me cookies and read me stories. Her voice grew softer, tinged with a bitterness that belied her years. The pretty lady was very nice to Grandma Helen at first. She would bring her cookies sometimes, too, and help her with her shopping. Grandma liked her. Eleanor listened, every word resonating with a disturbing familiarity. What happened then, Lily? Grandma Helen started forgetting things, Lily recounted, her eyes fixed on some distant memory. She would lose her keys or forget where she put her glasses, and the pretty lady would tell her it was okay, everyone forgets. But then the pretty lady started telling other people that Grandma wasn't safe living alone anymore. Lily fidgeted with her backpack strap. And then they took her away, to the place for old people. Before that, all her nice things disappeared, just like yours are. A knot tightened in Eleanor's stomach, the same pattern on her unfolding with terrifying precision. Lily reached into her small backpack, pulling out a tarnished silver picture frame. Inside, a faded photograph showed a kind-faced woman with Helen's features, smiling beside a jovial older man. This is the only picture I have of Grandma and Grandpa, Lily whispered, her fingers tracing the tarnished silver. I found it in the trash bin after they took Grandma away. The pretty lady threw it out. Eleanor gently took the frame, her heart aching for the child and the woman who had suffered this injustice. Lily, where are your parents? She asked, her voice softer than she intended. Lily's gaze dropped to her lap. My mom died a long time ago, and my dad, he got a different kind of sick. He couldn't take care of me anymore. He's not here. The vague answer painted a clear picture of abandonment and vulnerability. Eleanor's eyes scanned the empty lot, the makeshift shelter of branches and leaves Lily had likely constructed. A child, living rough, alone, hiding from the school people, who would undoubtedly try to place her in a system she clearly feared. A surge of protective anger coursed through Eleanor. Not only had Serena targeted her and Helen, but she had also left this innocent child to fend for herself, knowing the full well what would happen once Helen was gone. Tell me everything, Lily, Eleanor urged, her voice firm with purpose. Everything you remember about what happened to your grandma. Lily spoke, her words tumbling out, a chilling testament to Serena's calculated cruelty. Serena had systematically isolated Helen from her remaining neighbors and friends, convincing them Helen was slipping. She had subtly convinced Helen herself that her forgetfulness was worse than it was, undermining her confidence. Then, just as with the sleep aids in Eleanor's own case, Serena had arranged for a doctor, perhaps the same Dr. Hayes, to declare Helen incompetent. Once Helen was institutionalized in a nursing facility a shocking 40 miles away, Serena had moved with ruthless efficiency. Helen's house was emptied, her belongings quickly sold, with Serena claiming Helen had willed her the money. Grandma's sister, Aunt Susan, tried to visit her, Lily added, her voice bitter. But the pretty lady told her Grandma was too confused to see visitors. She wouldn't even let Aunt Susan know where Grandma was at first. Eleanor closed her eyes, the vivid image of her own future unspooling before her. Isolation, doubt, incompetence, a distant facility, and then the systematic liquidation of her life, her legacy. This wasn't a random act of greed, it was Serena's established pattern. Helen Miller was a blueprint, a trial run for Eleanor Vance. Lily, Eleanor said, opening her eyes, her gaze steely, you mentioned men with trucks taking things from my house. Do you remember what they looked like, or their trucks? Lily nodded, her eyes narrowing in concentration. One of them has a red truck, with writing on the side, something about antiques, and there's a man with gray hair who comes sometimes at night. He usually just takes boxes. Antiques, the crystal vase, her jewelry, the valuable pieces. Serena was systematically liquidating her assets, using a network of seemingly legitimate contacts. Eleanor realized with stark clarity that she couldn't simply confront Serena and David. They would deny everything, and with a forged power of attorney and a doctor on their side, her word against theirs would be easily dismissed as the ramblings of an incompetent old woman. She needed tangible proof, irrefutable evidence, and she certainly couldn't trust David, not yet. Eleanor reached into her purse, pulling out her personal cell phone. She scribbled her number on a scrap of paper along with her first name. Lily, this is my number, she said, handing it to the girl. If you see anything at all, like those men with the trucks or the man with gray hair, or if Serena brings another lady with short red hair here, I need you to call me. Promise? Lily nodded, her small hand clutching the paper. I promise, Hawaii. Eleanor then pulled out a $20 bill. This is for you, she said, pressing it into Lily's hand, for food and for being brave. Lily's eyes widened, a flicker of hope briefly eclipsing the sadness. Just remember to call me. You're helping me, Lily. You're helping me stop her. The truth is often stranger and far crueler than fiction. If you're as stunned as I was by what's happening, please like, share, and subscribe to follow the rest of my journey. The drive back to my house felt different. It was no longer a sanctuary, but a battleground. Serena's car was in the driveway, a sleek, gleaming testament to her carefully constructed facade. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. The raw anger and pain I'd felt talking to Lily had to be suppressed. Now I had to be the tired, slightly confused old woman they expected. The performance of my life was about to begin. I found Serena in the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune as she prepared lunch. She was stirring a pot of something fragrant on the stove, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her apron immaculate. I observed her with new, discerning eyes. Every gesture, every flicker of emotion on her face was scrutinized. Before, I would have seen a loving daughter-in-law. Now I saw a predator, meticulously setting a trap. Eleanor, darling, just in time, she chirped, turning with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm making your favorite minestrone soup. You must be starving after your errands. Her gaze lingered on me, a subtle probe. It smells wonderful, Serena, I replied, forcing a weary smile. But my stomach is still a little delicate. I think I'll just have a piece of toast and some water for now. The doctor at the hospital suggested bland food for a day or two. It was a plausible lie, one that explained my continued avoidance of her carefully prepared meals. Serena's smile tightened, a momentary flash of irritation crossing her features before she smoothly recovered. Of course, dear. Whatever you need, just rest. I decided to test the waters, to see how deep her lies ran, and how quickly she could invent new ones. Serena, I began, trying to sound casual. Have you seen anyone unusual around the house lately? Any strangers? Her answer was instantaneous, too quick, too smooth. Unusual? Strangers? No, Eleanor, not at all. Why do you ask? Her eyes were innocent, almost bewildered. I just thought I saw an unfamiliar truck parked outside yesterday, I lied, watching her carefully. Lily's words were my ammunition. A red one with some writing on the side. I must be mistaken. Serena's relief was palpable, hidden behind another effortless lie. Oh, that, she laughed, a light, dismissive sound. That was probably the antique appraiser I called. I'm just getting some of your older pieces evaluated for insurance purposes, darling. You know, making sure everything is up to date. David and I were just talking about your collection. She beamed as if she were doing me a great service. My stomach churned with revulsion. Antique appraiser. This was how she fenced them, how she gave a veneer of legitimacy to her thefts. My grandmother's pearls, my mother's crystal vase, all evaluated for insurance purposes before disappearing into the pockets of Serena and her accomplices. I feigned belief, nodding slowly. Oh, that's thoughtful of you, Serena. My memory just isn't what it used to be, I suppose. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. That evening, after a dinner of forced pleasantries and bland food, I excused myself early, claiming exhaustion. The moment my bedroom door clicked shut, the facade dropped. My hands moved with urgent purpose to my jewelry box. I systematically went through each compartment, each velvet-lined tray. The beautiful pearl necklace, gone. The sparkling diamond earrings, gone. My ruby ring, a gift from my husband on our 10th anniversary, gone. And at least 6 other pieces, smaller but equally cherished. I mentally tallied their worth, the figure quickly climbing past $15,000, and that was just the jewelry, not counting the furniture and other heirlooms I knew were missing. The numbers were staggering, but the human cost was immeasurable. Each piece was a memory, a legacy, a tangible link to my past. Serena wasn't just stealing money. She was stealing my history, piece by painful piece. A cold, hard resolve solidified within me. They thought I was losing my mind, becoming compliant. They were wrong. I would fight back, and I would start tomorrow. The next morning, the smell of fresh coffee once again permeated the kitchen. Serena, ever the attentive daughter-in-law, placed my usual mug at my spot. "Here you go, Eleanor," she said, her voice lilting. "Just the way you like it." I picked up the mug, bringing it to my lips, feigning a sip. The metallic undertone was unmistakable, bitter beneath the coffee's rich aroma. I discreetly allowed the liquid to fill my mouth. Then, under the guise of wiping my lips with a napkin, I spat it back into the mug. I made a show of finishing my toast and water, then announced my plans for the morning. "I think I'll take a nap after David leaves," I said, stretching languidly. "I just didn't get enough sleep last night, and I want to be fresh for my appointment this afternoon." Serena's eyes lit up. "Oh, that's a wonderful idea, darling. Rest up. You deserve it." Her eagerness to have me out of the way was almost comical. Once David's car pulled out of the driveway, I heard Serena's hushed, animated voice from downstairs. I crept to my bedroom door, pressing my ear against the wood. "Yes, she took the full dose," Serena whispered into the phone, her voice triumphant. "Getting much more compliant. The confusion is setting in beautifully. I'd say we can move to phase 2 by next week." My blood ran cold. Phase 2, the declaration of incompetence. Then I heard sounds of movement downstairs, furniture being shifted, drawers opening and closing. Serena was going through my things in the living room, perhaps even the study. I quietly returned to my bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. I had to continue the act. The bedroom door creaked open. I kept my eyes closed, breathing evenly, feigning deep sleep. Through barely opened eyelids, I watched as Serena moved silently to my dresser. Her fingers deftly opened my jewelry box, removing several more pieces before closing it again. My heart ached, but I held still. Then she moved to my important documents drawer, the one where I kept my medical records, my financial statements, my legal papers. I watched, a silent scream trapped in my throat, as she removed a stack of documents, replacing them with a different set of papers. She was rewriting my history, fabricating evidence of my decline. The ultimate betrayal. They weren't just taking my things, they were erasing me. The soft click of Serena's bedroom door closing was Eleanor's signal. She immediately rose, her feigned sleep dissolving into a coiled alertness. Her gaze fell on her important documents drawer. With trembling hands, she pulled it open, carefully examining the papers Serena had placed there. They were medical evaluations, all bearing Eleanor's name, but signed by doctors she'd never met. Each report painted a chilling picture. Significant signs of dementia, confusion, and paranoid behavior, difficulty with executive function, unprovoked outbursts. One, more alarming than the rest, recommended immediate evaluation for inpatient psychiatric care. Eleanor's breath hitched. Serena had stolen her real, pristine medical records and replaced them with these fabricated horrors, systematically building a case to declare her incompetent, to strip her of her rights and her very identity. This wasn't just about money, it was about erasing Eleanor Vance. Her phone buzzed, a small, jarring sound in the silence. It was a text from Lily. "Red truck here now, taking more stuff." Eleanor rushed to the window. Sure enough, a beat-up red pickup truck, emblazoned with the words "Vintage Finds, Estate Sales and Appraisals," was parked in her driveway. Two burly men were loading her antique dining room chairs, pieces her mother had inherited from her grandmother, into the back of the truck. Serena stood beside them, a small stack of cash in her hand, counting it with a satisfied smirk. The rage that surged through Eleanor was cold and absolute. That afternoon, under the pretense of grocery shopping, Eleanor drove to the public library. She needed answers, information that couldn't be controlled by Serena. She sat down at a computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard, typing in Serena Davis. Serena's maiden name, Lily had told her. The search results were slow to load, but when they did, they painted a horrifying picture. Serena's past wasn't just dark, it was drenched in death and deceit. Two previous elderly husbands, Arthur Jenkins, Walter Croft, both wealthy, both widowed, both died suddenly, suspiciously, after their wills had been changed to leave everything to Serena. Arthur Jenkins, a retired industrialist, had died of a heart attack just 18 months after marrying Serena. His family had raised questions, but nothing had come of it. Walter Croft, a quiet university professor, had died from an accidental overdose of heart medication and alcohol, a ruling that had also raised eyebrows in his small academic community. Eleanor scrolled through digitized newspaper obituaries. Serena was consistently described as a devoted wife, heartbroken by their tragic losses. Each article included a photograph of Serena, her smile wide, her eyes full of what the reporters had mistaken for grief. Eleanor printed everything, her heart pounding with a sickening realization. This wasn't just a greedy daughter-in-law. Serena was a serial killer, a black widow who preyed on vulnerable, wealthy elderly men, and now women. Helen Miller, Eleanor herself, were simply her latest targets. The thought sent a chill down Eleanor's spine, but it also ignited a fierce resolve. She wouldn't be Serena's next victim. At dinner, the tension was thick, though only Eleanor seemed aware of it. David was oblivious, discussing his day at work, while Serena maintained her cheerful facade. Eleanor, however, had a bomb to drop. "You know," Eleanor began casually, stirring her soup, "all this talk about my memory and my documents has made me think I really should update my will. It's been years." Serena's fork paused halfway to her mouth, the small clink against her plate the only sound. David looked up, a familiar concern shadowing his face. "Yes, Mom," he said too quickly. "That's probably a good idea. You know, with your recent memory issues, it's probably best to get all your legal documents in order." Serena chimed in, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Indeed, darling. And speaking of which, I've been keeping a little record just to help us all keep track." She produced a small, leather-bound notebook from her handbag, a modest, almost apologetic gesture. "Just little things, you know. I thought it might be helpful for Dr. Hayes." Eleanor took the notebook, her hands surprisingly steady. Inside, Serena had meticulously documented 3 months of Eleanor's supposed forgetfulness. Eleanor asked about her glasses, even though they were on her head. 10:12. Eleanor repeated the same story about her surgery twice at dinner. 10:15. Eleanor accused me of moving her car keys. 10:20. Eleanor became agitated when I suggested she forgot where the vase was, displaying increasing paranoia. 10:22. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, a twisted narrative blending minor, natural memory lapses with outright lies and distorted truths. Each entry built upon the last, painting a portrait of a woman rapidly declining into senility and delusion. Eleanor read the notes, her stomach clenching with a mixture of disgust and dark admiration for Serena's meticulous cruelty. After dinner, feigning an early bedtime, Eleanor retreated to her room. But sleep was far from her mind. She started calling various nursing homes, starting with those furthest away, then slowly working her way closer, inquiring about a resident named Helen Miller. Each call yielded the same result. "No record of a Helen Miller, ma'am." I'm sorry, we don't have anyone by that name in our system. The terrible truth hit Eleanor with the force of a tidal wave. Helen Miller wasn't in a nursing home. Serena hadn't just put her away, she had murdered her. The chill that ran through Eleanor this time was not just fear, it was a profound understanding of the depths of the monster she was facing. Her phone buzzed again. Lily, pretty lady on phone again, talking about doctors and papers, says soon. Soon, Eleanor felt a surge of adrenaline. Serena was accelerating to your timeline. She had found her new husband, a new target, and she wanted Eleanor gone quickly. Eleanor knew she had to act, and fast. The game had changed. It was no longer about saving her assets. It was about saving her life. The game was accelerating, and Eleanor knew time was critical. Serena had mentioned an appointment with Dr. Hayes, undoubtedly the final step before the declaration of incompetence. Eleanor maintained her charade with meticulous precision. Each morning she pretended to drink the drugged coffee, the bitter metallic taste, a constant reminder of the venom being fed to her. When Serena checked in, Eleanor would feign a deeper sedation, her movements slower, her words more slurred. She needed Serena to believe the drugs were working, that her victim was nearly ready for the final act. One afternoon, Eleanor heard Serena rummaging through her desk drawers again. The sounds were faint, muffled, but distinct. After Serena's footsteps retreated and the house fell silent, Eleanor crept back to her desk. There, carefully placed on top of her leather blotter, was a single sheet of paper. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat as she read the elegant, flowing script. It was a suicide note, supposedly written by her. I can't bear the confusion anymore. The world has become a blur, and I no longer recognize the person I see in the mirror. I've lived a good life full of purpose and love, and now it's time to let go. Please don't blame yourselves. This is my choice. I love you both, Eleanor. A cold, visceral fear gripped Eleanor. This wasn't just about theft or even financial ruin. Serena planned to murder her and stage it as a suicide. The fabricated medical records, the documented confusion and paranoia, the increasing dosages of sedatives. It was all meticulously designed to support this final heinous act. The thought of David finding her, believing her to have given up, twisted her heart with a potent blend of rage and heartbreak. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and carefully, methodically, photographed the note from multiple angles. She captured the handwriting, the placement on the desk, the small error at the corner. This was irrefutable evidence. Then, with a practiced calm, she placed the note back exactly as she had found it, ensuring not a single detail was disturbed. Eleanor knew she couldn't face this alone. She needed an ally, someone outside Serena's poisonous orbit. There was only one person she could trust. She sent a text to Lily. Lily, I need your help. Can you meet me at the library in an hour? Urgent. Lily was already waiting when Eleanor arrived, huddled in a corner of the children's section, pretending to read a picture book. Eleanor sat beside her, her voice gentle, preparing the child for a difficult truth. Honey, Eleanor began, I'm so sorry. I've been doing some looking, and I think your grandmother is gone. I think the pretty lady hurt her. Lily's small face crumpled. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. She simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement, as if she had already suspected the worst, the truth echoing her own unspoken fears. The raw grief on her face hardened Eleanor's resolve. Lily, Eleanor continued, her voice firm, I need you to do something very important for me. It could be dangerous, but if you help me, we can make sure the pretty lady never hurts anyone again, and we can get justice for your grandma. Lily looked up, her gaze steady. What do I do? I need you to hide in my house tonight, Eleanor explained, her voice low and serious. And I need you to watch what happens. I need you to record it if you can. Eleanor pulled a tiny digital recorder, no bigger than her thumb, from her purse. This is a special little machine, she demonstrated, pressing a button. A tiny red light blinked. You just press this button when you hear something important, and it records. You hold it still, close to the sound. Can you do that? Lily's eyes widened with curiosity as she took the device, her small fingers carefully pressing the button. Yes, she whispered, her voice filled with a newfound purpose. And Lily, Eleanor stressed, looking directly into the child's eyes, If you ever for a moment feel like you're in danger, I need you to run. Don't worry about the recorder. Don't worry about anything. Just run. Promise me." "I promise," Lily replied, her grip firm on the recorder. That evening at dinner, Eleanor put on her most convincing performance yet. She was extra tired, extra confused. She asked David the same question twice about his day, feigning a frustrated sigh when he gently reminded her. She complained about a persistent dizziness, pressing a hand to her temple. David, visibly concerned, suggested an early bedtime. "Mom, you really need to rest. Let's get you to bed." Serena's eyes gleamed with undisguised satisfaction. "Yes, darling," she cooed, her voice sweet and solicitous. "I'll even bring you up some warm milk. It'll help you sleep soundly." Her smirk was almost imperceptible, but Eleanor saw it, a chilling confirmation of what was to come. Once in her bedroom, the door closed and locked, Eleanor moved with quiet urgency. She arranged pillows and blankets under her duvet, shaping them into a convincing dummy in her bed, a human-like form beneath the sheets. Then she quietly slipped into her walk-in closet, her heart pounding. She left the closet door cracked open just enough for a sliver of light and gently pushed one of the windows slightly ajar, just enough for Lily to climb through later. The trap was set. Now all they could do was wait. The silence in the closet was deafening, broken only by the frantic pounding of Eleanor's heart. Every shadow seemed to hold a breath, every creak of the old house amplified. Around 11 o'clock p.m., the soft glow of a flashlight pierced the crack in the closet door. Then the bedroom door creaked open. Serena entered, a glass of milk in one hand, the flashlight in the other. Her face, illuminated by the beam, was a stark mask of anticipation. She moved with a predatory grace toward the bed, her gaze fixed on the bundled figure under the blankets. She set the glass of milk on the nightstand, her eyes narrowing as she observed the perfectly still form. After a moment, a subtle shift in her expression revealed a dawning suspicion. The figure wasn't breathing. "Clever old woman," Serena muttered, a low, humorless chuckle escaping her lips. She reached out, her fingers deftly pulling back the covers, revealing the carefully arranged pillows. A flicker of genuine anger crossed her face, quickly replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. Just then a soft scraping sound came from the window. Lily. She was climbing through, silent as a shadow, the small digital recorder clutched in her hand. Serena spun around, her head snapping toward the sound. Her mask, so perfectly maintained for weeks, shattered. Her face was now a canvas of pure, unadulterated menace. Cold, calculating, and utterly without mercy. "Well, well," Serena purred, her voice devoid of any pretense of warmth. She advanced toward Lily, her movements swift and silent. "Another little speak. You're the little rat who's been watching the house, aren't you? Just like you watched when I dealt with your pathetic grandmother." Her hand shot out, grabbing Lily's arm in a rough grip. Lily gasped, fear flashing in her eyes. She struggled, her small body twisting. "Let me go," she cried, her voice a terrified squeak. From the closet, Eleanor's fingers moved with precise, surgical accuracy. She pressed the record button on her phone, capturing every word, every chilling admission. Serena pulled Lily closer, her grip tightening, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "She fought me at the end, you know," Serena confessed, her voice chillingly calm. "Stronger than I expected for such an old woman. But the pills I'd been giving her for months made her weak, confused. No one questioned it when I said she'd wandered off and fallen into the creek." Lily, tears streaming down her face, screamed, "You killed her!" Serena's smile widened, a truly horrifying sight. "I solved a problem, little girl," she corrected, her voice dripping with sadistic satisfaction. "Just like I solved problems with my other husbands." Eleanor's blood ran cold. This was it, the full confession. Serena continued, basking in her own depravity. "Arthur was so easy, a little digitalis in his evening brandy. Heart attack, so believable. Walter, too. His doctor was already prescribing heart medication. A little extra, a bit of alcohol. Also so believable. No one ever suspected poor grieving Serena." She laughed, a low guttural sound that echoed in the silent room. "And now I have to solve the problem of you and that meddling old doctor. Everyone will understand when they find her suicide note and her body. Serena pulled out a syringe, its needle glinting ominously in the dim light. It was filled with a clear, viscous liquid. And now, she said, her eyes fixed on Lily, I have to solve the problem of you. This will be quick, little girl. Much more merciful than what I had planned for the doctor. She raised the syringe, her intent clear. Let her go, Serena. The command, clear and unwavering, sliced through the air. Serena froze, her arms still raised, the syringe poised. She spun around, her eyes wide with shock, the mask completely gone, revealing the raw, unadulterated evil beneath. Eleanor stepped out of the closet, her posture erect, her gaze steady, radiating an unshakable resolve. You're supposed to be unconscious, Serena hissed, her voice a low snarl of pure fury. I stopped drinking your coffee 3 days ago, Eleanor revealed, her voice devoid of emotion. I know about the fake medical records you planted. I know about the forged power of attorney. I know about the suicide note you wrote and put on my desk. I know about your other husbands, Arthur Jenkins and Walter Croft. And I know what you did to Helen Miller. Serena's grip on Lily's arm loosened, her face paling. The shock of being discovered, of her meticulous plan unraveling, was evident. Lily, seizing the moment, pulled away, scrambling to safety behind Eleanor, her small body trembling. Serena stared at Eleanor, her mouth agape, then stammered, You have no proof of anything. The bravado was gone, replaced by a desperate, fleeting fear. Eleanor slowly, deliberately, raised her phone, the small red light of the recording function still blinking steadily. Actually, I do, she said, her voice like ice. I've been recording this entire conversation. Your confession to 3 murders, your admission of drugging me, and your threat to kill a child. It's all right here. Serena stared at the phone in Eleanor's hand, her face a mask of disbelief and rapidly escalating panic. But even in her terror, the monster remained. David will never believe you, she spat, her voice laced with a desperate venom. He thinks you're losing your mind. He's heard it all from me, seen all the proof. Eleanor met her gaze, unwavering. Maybe, she replied, her voice calm, powerful. But the police will believe the recording, and they'll believe the evidence I've gathered about your previous husbands. They'll believe the experts who examine your forged documents. They'll find Helen. Enraged, cornered, Serena let out a guttural shriek and lunged. The syringe, still clutched in her hand, became a deadly weapon aimed straight at Eleanor. But Lily, still trembling behind Eleanor, was quicker. With a surge of adrenaline, the small girl stuck out her foot. Serena, caught off guard, tripped, tumbling awkwardly to the floor. The syringe skittered across the polished hardwood, coming to rest near the doorframe. At that exact moment, David appeared in the doorway, his face ashen, white with shock and a dawning horror. He had heard everything. Seeing the syringe, the unmasked fury on Serena's face, and the terror in Lily's eyes, David didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, pinning Serena's flailing arms to the floor. His gaze, usually so gentle, was now filled with horror and disgust as he looked at his wife. I heard what you said about your other husbands, he choked out, his voice raw with disbelief and pain. I heard you confess to murdering an old woman and planning to kill my mother. How could you, Serena? How could you? Eleanor, her own adrenaline still pumping, calmly dialed 911. As she explained the situation in measured tones, Serena alternated between tearful, theatrical pleas to David. It's a lie, darling, she's confused. And cold, venomous threats directed at Eleanor and Lily. The true Serena was finally, completely, exposed. Eleanor knelt beside Lily, pulling the shaking child into a comforting embrace. Is it over? Lily whispered, her small voice muffled against Eleanor's shoulder. Yes, sweetheart, Eleanor murmured, stroking her hair. It's over. 6 months later, life had slowly, tentatively begun to heal. Lily, now officially Eleanor's adopted granddaughter and affectionately calling her Grandma Eleanor, was thriving in school. The empty lot next door, no longer her hidden home, was being cleared for a new community garden project, a symbol of new beginnings. David, though aged by the profound betrayal of his wife and his own unwitting complicity, had found a fragile peace. His relationship with Eleanor, once strained and shadowed by Serena's manipulations, was now deeper, forged through fire. He spent countless hours apologizing, his remorse genuine and palpable. One afternoon as they walked in the park, Lily, holding David's hand, looked up. "Are you sad the bad lady is in prison, Papa David?" David sighed, his gaze distant. "I'm sad for the people she hurt, Lily, and I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. But I'm not sad she can't hurt anyone else." The trial had been grueling, a painful dissection of deceit, but ultimately cathartic. Serena's claims of a conspiracy, of Eleanor's senility, were quickly disproved by overwhelming evidence. Eleanor's recording, chillingly clear, played Serena's confessions to the courtroom. The forged medical documents were exposed as fakes. And most damning of all, the exhumed bodies of Arthur Jenkins and Walter Croft, following a swift police investigation, confirmed the presence of digitalis, precisely as Serena had described. Serena received a sentence of life in prison without parole for 3 counts of murder, multiple counts of fraud, and attempted murder. Justice, cold and absolute, had been served. The police investigation also finally located Helen Miller's body in a shallow part of the creek bordering the empty lot. Lily, with Eleanor and David by her side, was finally able to lay her beloved grandmother to rest. A small, quiet ceremony that brought a measure of peace. Eleanor reconnected with Mrs. Lee, who, filled with remorse, revealed how Serena had manipulated her, convincing her Eleanor needed quiet and privacy, subtly pushing her away. Mrs. Lee, now a steadfast friend, pointed out the unexpected gifts born from the horror. "You gained a granddaughter, Eleanor," she said gently, "and your bond with David, it's stronger than ever." Eleanor often found herself helping Lily with her homework, their heads bent together over textbooks. "Your Grandma Helen would be so proud of you, Lily," Eleanor would say, tracing the words on the page. "So proud of your bravery." Inspired by her ordeal, Eleanor had begun volunteering at an organization dedicated to helping elderly people avoid financial scams and elder abuse, channeling her pain into purpose. One evening as Eleanor was preparing dinner, her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Lily's school called," it read. She got 100% on her spelling test. I'm proud of our girl." Eleanor smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. A profound sense of peace settled over her. The betrayal had been horrific, a plunge into the darkest corners of human cruelty. But from that darkness, unexpected gifts had emerged. A loving granddaughter, a son redeemed, and a renewed sense of strength and purpose. Family, Eleanor realized, was more than blood. It was chosen trust, brave actions, and the unwavering light of love that, even in the deepest shadows, could never truly be extinguished.